Ymedia.
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 Stay tuned with Ymedia.
Ymedia is a media company. With 360-degree approach in reaching the audience over 8 media platforms. Television, Channel Y Canada, 24/7, available nationwide. Toronto, Ottawa.
Welcome to Ymedia. Today we're here in Ottawa.
Vancouver.
Welcome to Ymedia. We are at the Port of Vancouver.
Calgary.
Ymedia Group.
Welcome back once again after the break, and we were talking about Ymedia Foreign Policy Report about the war right now, and I think two questions everyone is asking: when will this war end? How this will war end? I doubt we have answers to both the questions exactly, but looking at the circumstances, we might try to answer these two very important questions for a common person. Ymedia, welcome back once again.
Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. And I know before the break we were talking about how all this war and everything is affecting the common person. But when will this war end? Everyone is asking. Of course, some people have travel plans. There are so many other things going on, you know, and everybody wants this war to end. So I'm sure everyone wants to ask this question: when will this war end? And the other question everyone wants to ask: how this war will end? So I'm presenting when will this war end and how this war ended, a couple of things that I know, and then I'll take your analysis as well. So when you talk about when will this war end, you know, as we're talking in an earlier show as well, we know that starting June there is a FIFA Soccer World Cup, and I'm sure President Trump, because US is the host, so they would want to stay over there, and US being the host country, President Trump would not want, you know, any deflection. He would want to share the limelight because the semi-finals are there, the finals are there, so US as the host, the whole world is watching, so he was there at the team draws as well. So I think President Trump would want, ideally speaking, the war to end before June for sure. That's what I'm thinking. So we have 2 months in that case scenario. There was a G7 meeting recently in France, and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he mentioned that the war could end in 2 to 4 weeks. That's what he said there privately to the G7 leaders. So will the war end in 2 to 4 weeks? The other thing is, I think, when will this war end? US right now, as we were discussing earlier as well, and I'll listen to your views as well, US definitely wants to end this war sooner than later, because with every passing day, I think US definitely knows that Iran is having more and more leverage. Right now, the 15 points that US is presenting, I think they're way off. I doubt Iran will accept that. And the 5 points that Iran is highlighting, you know, Iran is saying, okay, pay me all the money, because both the countries, you know, they will want and guarantee that that we will not be attacked again. There's a lot of trust deficit. So we've all already shared the 15 points that US is saying and the 5 points that Iran is saying. So all those points, I don't think so they can be met. So moving towards this thing, how this war will end, I think on how this war will end, I think there is a lot of trust deficit right now, as we see, number one. Secondly, we've heard talks about mediation, or there were discussion that President Trump did mention earlier, but Iran said no, there are no talks going on. Now, we don't know exactly what happened behind the closed doors, but one thing I think I clearly know, that President Trump knew that yes, right now there are challenges in the stock market, the oil prices are going high, and that's hurting us, to the point that they allowed Russia to sell oil, to the point they allowed Iran to sell oil. So Iran is selling oil at a premium to India, Russia is selling oil at a premium to India, China, so many other countries. So Russia is selling oil, Iran is selling oil. So how this war will end, I think US definitely knows that all our 15 points won't be accepted, and Iran also knows all our 5 points won't be accepted. And when Trump was talking about mediation at that time, I would assume Trump was just calming down the tempers, and he wanted to make sure the oil prices come down, the stock market stabilize a bit, so that there's not heavy losses, there are not so many tensions, the inflation comes down a bit, and it takes care of other things as well. But now there is another discussion as well. Islamabad, Pakistan, Islamabad, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, he also mentioned that yes, Islamabad is open, we are ready to facilitate the discussion, mediate, and Turkey was also part of that, Pakistan also part of that. So they're saying Egypt was also part of that. Whether the discussions will take in Islamabad, I'm not sure. That itself, it's a war zone right now. But maybe, or will it be Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt? I don't know. And the other question is, will Iran accept this? And the discussions that we're hearing that US and Iran are talking, could talk in Islamabad, Pakistan. I think, first things first, Iran is not part of that discussion. Second, will Iran agree to talk to US? Will Iran agree to talk to mediation with Turkey? Because Turkey is a NATO ally of US. And other part is, will Iran agree to have discussions in Pakistan? So these are all the questions. I don't know how they will answer. And last point, I was listening to Jeffrey Sachs, and he was mentioning this thing, that if at all Putin, Xi Jinping and Modi, all three of them, they talk sense to Trump that yes, enough is enough. Because those are the three still powerful countries, and I think China, India, and Russia together. I doubt Russia by itself, or China by itself, or India by itself has any that sort of leverage that they can really tell US. And all three of them put together, do they have that sort of leverage? I don't know. But I think that is another way that yes, things could, because US is also looking for an off-ramp. I'm pretty sure about that. Please.
I think you're absolutely right about US wanting an off-ramp and calling it a success, after what they did with the Ayatollah, the highest administration of the regime. But one massive factor here is Benjamin Netanyahu. It's Israel, and Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted this war. He said for 40 years he dreamt about it with Iran. So I think that's the bigger point. If there was a report that came out that the Vice President J.D. Vance was put in place to do some of the negotiations and contacted Benjamin Netanyahu, and they, from the reports that came out, is that the conversation didn't go so well because Israel has their own plans of what they want to accomplish in this war, and the United States have their own. And so the two allies that went into this war, U.S. and Israel, against Iran, they seem to have different perspectives of U.S. wanting an off-ramp and wanting to stabilize, oil at below $100 a barrel, stable economy, make sure that the GCC regions are able to, because the GCC regions really heavily invest in the American economy. If they have to now pull out their funds to remilitarize and defend themselves, that's going to affect the United States economy. Also, if Iran does push, because Iran's selling oil to China, but not in USD, that also affects the petrodollar, right? So the US is looking at its own economy. It's looking at the fact that it's going to lose, what soldiers are going to go into Iran? It's going to be American soldiers, right? So it's looking at casualties, lives lost. It's looking at its own economy, and it didn't need, and this administration cannot say that there were any immediate reasons to go into Iran. They can't say it's because of nuclear. That wasn't the situation. They can't say it's for really any reason. So I think the big factor here is Israel able to make a deal with Iran? and U.S. is beholden to Israel on many ways, because we can talk about AIPAC. We can talk about the American politicians that are now called Israel first, not America first. We can talk about all those things, but that's a whole nother conversation to be had. So this is the biggest challenge here, and I think you can't root out what and see. Bibi in his own country has his own issues, right? Yeah. We're talking about arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, but is
International Court.
also in his own country, and he is under the mindset of forever wars, because then he will stay. You can't go into elections, right? Didn't Zelensky say that? How can I have elections when my country's in war? So and the same thing we're seeing in Israel. So right now there's a war with southern Lebanon. So it's at all fronts all the time. So can you get them to come to some consensus? And you have to find out, what was Israel's end goal? Is it to completely destabilize Iran, as they called the biggest threat? And then what? Once when Iran, let's just say, is destabilized, what is their bigger goal? What is their bigger purpose? And so you have to also ask, like, what is the reason why Trump is going along with it, even though it's hurting his own poll numbers, it's hurting his own economy, and it's going to put American soldiers' lives at risk. So there's always the case of, like, how the word they're using is, how is Trump being co-opted into this, and what is it that they have on him? Or so as long as we understand those critical pieces, it's hard to say if there's going to be a negotiation and an agreement reached for ceasefire. I think because we don't know those things, it's very hard.
As you were mentioning earlier in the show as well, certain things Trump says quite openly. I was quite keen to watch this weekend, when that summit was happening in Miami. And there were Saudi sovereign funds, there was discussion on that. And I wanted to listen to what Trump would say. So in the interest of time, he highlighted quite a few points. But since we're discussing how this war will end, so one of the points which I thought was quite relevant, because now he was talking about Trump in his speech, very openly, candidly was talking about a post-war scenario. So in his speech, Trump, clearly discussed this thing that yes, it's time for Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia and Israel should come together. We all know if 7th October wouldn't have happened, the Hamas attack on Israel, just in case. So we're pretty sure the Abraham Accords and everything was going as per Trump's plan, or maybe there's some deep state, their plan. UAE and Israel, they already had signed agreements, flights going towards each other, and UAE was, and after UAE, then we heard, okay, fine, then Bahrain said that, okay, fine, we're also doing business and trade deals with Israel, and I'm sure Saudi Arabia would have been next in line. And now Trump is saying that openly. So we're seeing a post-war scenario where Trump would say, okay, fine. I mean, whether it's Trump's wish, or whether it's the deep state's wish, or whether it's Saudi Arabia and UAE's wish to openly, have good relationship with Israel. But I think the common agenda over here, the common agenda of, I think so, the common agenda of US, Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, I think the common agenda of all of this is to weaken Iran for sure. That is for sure. That is the common agenda. So how do you weaken Iran with the regime change, the new regime? Is it, if not a puppet regime, is it supportive of your ideas? And other than that, would you want to break up Iran or whatever? But I think that is the common agenda. And you're talking about Lebanon, I think Israel is fighting on all those fronts, wherever Iran has all those proxy militias going on, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon or Hamas in Gaza or West Bank, or whether it's Houthis, in Yemen. So Israel definitely wants to weaken Iran. And I think so does Saudi Arabia and UAE as well. Because Saudi Arabia and UAE, they've always seen, especially Saudi Arabia has always seen Iran as a major rival. Of course, Iran is not as strong or as powerful as Saudi Arabia, but Iran is not, they're not the minnows. It's not a small force. It has a huge population, army, huge demographic as well, and you're mentioning the terrain as well. So I think that is what is at stake right now. I think we have to quickly move on to our next topic because we're running short of time. Why media, we'll now talk about why media political sensex. At why media political sensex, we want to talk about Prime Minister Mark Carney's first year. So here we are, Mark Carney, after his first year, how has he performed? And will the Conservatives bounce back? So these will be the two questions we'll try to address at why media political sensex for you. Romana ji, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good to see you. As always, and Mark Carney, from there are leaders, as we were talking about President Trump, right from a U.S. citizen, he didn't get elected as a mayor or a senator or anything else, not even served in a cabinet position directly as a president. And here's Mark Carney as well. I mean, he didn't fight municipal elections, right there into the leadership as a prime minister. Here we are, Mark Carney, 1 year as a prime minister. The polls clearly indicate that yes, the Liberals are in a strong position. If you look at the different polls, I was looking at Nanos or Main Street, they're all giving different numbers, but definitely Liberal has a strong lead over the Conservatives. So Mark Carney's first year and Conservatives, will they bounce back? I think the earliest point would be the elections that are happening. Currently, the Liberals in the last elections, they were 169. After 169, what happened? Three of the member parliaments, they left. We all know Christopher Freeland, Bill Blair. So from 169, actually there would have been 166, but there were 4 defections. So 4 MPs crossed the floor from Conservatives and Liberals. So they are back to not 169 but 170, still too shy of majority. Will they get these 2 seats? We'll talk about that. But before we do that, I want to ask, overall, what's your analysis on Prime Minister Mark Carney's 1 year?
Yes. There was it was 3 Conservative MPs and 1 NDP.
1 NDP,
yeah. And that this is just, it's unheard of to have that many Conservative MPs becoming Liberal. So first year of Mark Carney, yes, went from someone who we didn't really know that well. Of course, he served as the Governor of Bank of Canada and England, but not a politician, right? And all of a sudden, I think a year and a half ago we didn't know who Mark Carney was, and now within this short time, Prime Minister. Then he won an election. How has he done the first year? Well, he has definitely, gone out of his way to bring Canada on talking terms with many nations. I think he spends most of his time overseas in terms of, making sure that there's trade agreements and, having some sort of path of not relying so much on the United States. I don't know if that's going to be accomplished because the United States is our biggest trading partners, but definitely diversifying is something that Canada should have been already doing, which we're seeing this Prime Minister really make it as their critical point of doing. So, when it comes to Canada and the European Union, of course, he's kept his close ties there. We've seen him go over to India. We've seen him go over to China. We've seen him go to economies that you cannot ignore in this world, growing economies. And so that's the case. We also saw, what it meant in terms of the tariffs that the United States had put on Canada, and being able to make sure that the stuff that are not in our CUSMA agreement are off the table. Now, we also saw at a time when Mark Carney became Prime Minister, President Trump's rhetoric on 51st state slowed down, right? Mark Carney took that first trip to the White House. They sat down, said, I talked to the owners of Canada and they're not interested. And also, made the reference of, certain things are not for sale, pointing to, for example, the White House is not for sale. Really making that correlation with Canada, where Canada stands. Now, when it comes to trade agreements and when it comes to all these things that his administration and he has been working so hard on, which is great on that part, and you can't say he's not someone who doesn't work hard because we've seen him work hard. But now, where has he not delivered? When it comes to affordability is a massive thing. Still, housing is an issue. Affordability in terms of, are you able to pay your mortgage? Are you able to, pay rent? Are you able to buy food? Are you able to have a decent standard of living? These are things that have not been delivered. We have seen when it comes to the unemployment rate, it is, what was it, like 80,000 plus jobs lost in a previous month. So, even though he's doing the long-term planning of diversification, what does that mean with other nations? What does that mean for the average person, the average employee, the average small business owner who needs to just be able to work, be able to make a decent living, and to be able to afford to live here in Canada? So those fronts, there isn't much that I could say, and really thinking about this in hindsight, he should really have ministers, some sort of a committee that is just there for affordability, and really to be able to tackle the domestic aspects. Yes, he did, make trading within the country, between the provinces, interprovincial trade barriers. He did remove those, but still we need, having shy of what's happened to, a province like Ontario that relied heavily on jobs within the American economy when it comes to the auto industry, manufacturing. It's been devastating, and that's not going to be replaced that easily with foreign agreements with other nations. So this is something that I think he's fallen short on, in terms of, yes, you're doing the big picture planning, but what about the day-to-day factor of affordability, which has been a thing. So it would be great to see some sort of advisory committee, have some ministers that are really there for affordability, and come up with some critical things that could be implemented right away, so we can see results right away. And of course, this war in the Middle East isn't helping at all when it comes to affordability here. And as I said, it's like a war in the grocery store. When it comes to what he's been able to do for his minority government, this is someone in a short year was able to attract 3 conservative MPs to cross the floor to become Liberals, and 1 NDP MP. So he's someone who seems to be attracting, floor crossers. And when it comes to international stage, and I have, a lot of colleagues and network overseas, and they all said, when they heard his speech in Davos, the World Economic Forum, about middle power, they thought, they were wowed by him. And after that speech, we did see a lot of MPs defect and go over to the Liberals. Now there are 3 by-elections that are occurring, because there was some talk about, are we going to go into a federal election because he's got a minority government and he's going to seek for a majority government. Now with the 4 MPs that crossed the floor to become Liberal, now you got 3 by-elections coming up, 2 in Toronto, and 1 in Quebec, around the Montreal area. It seems like those seats would, they're Liberal leaning, so it seems like those would go over. He is 2 seats shy, so then he will have, he'll have his majority government. Now, what does that mean for the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party? It's not so good for him. This is, he's going to have to answer. Yes, he did pass the membership vote, right? When the Conservative Party had the leadership review with the Conservative members, he passed that. He's safe. But now you have to see if he's going to be safe with his caucus. There's 2 ways that our parliament can overthrow the leader of their party. One is through their membership, and the other one is through the caucus. And if your caucus votes you out, which is pretty much how, if you recall, Trudeau was pushed out. It was really his caucus dissenting against him, which made him step down, which caused the leadership election to occur, where Mark Carney won and became Prime Minister. So now, in a matter of a few weeks, you're going to have potentially the Liberals having a majority, and this is not such good news for Pierre Poilievre, because under his watch, with a very unpopular Trudeau outgoing, where Liberal MPs were not going to seek re-election, the Conservatives were up 26 points to the Liberals, and that's why a lot of Liberal MPs decided they're probably not going to seek candidacy. They don't want to lose an election. And then the massive turnaround, right? Trump gets elected into office, Mark Carney becomes Prime Minister until a general election, and you had the Conservatives that were leading for like a year plus prior to 26-point lead. They lose an election, They and then and at the same time, Pierre Poilievre loses his riding that he's been there for 20 plus years, has to seek in a by-election to come back into government, and under his watch, you had 3 of your MPs defect, and under your watch, you had a minority Liberal government come into majority. So it's not so good for the leader of the Conservative Party. It could potentially mean dissent. Some could say, well, he's going to be safe if we don't go into an election this year. There's 3 years left. If Mark Carney gets his majority, that he might be safe in those 3 years. But that is when you're going to have people who are interested in running to become the next leader of the Conservative Party, who may start plotting. And if the caucus starts moving a certain way, then he could see his fate like Erin O'Toole did, where caucus had a meeting and after that meeting was done, a few hours later, Erin O'Toole was no longer the leader of the Conservative Party.
Very good points that you've made. I'll start from this one. There is no doubt that Mark Carney, I think, first I'll talk about this thing that Prime Minister Mark Carney's first year. I think Prime Minister Mark Carney's first year, he's really shifted the gears as far as the foreign policy is concerned. So he's, as you were mentioning earlier, I think he's very actively opened the doors once again. Why I'm saying this, that we had some very difficult relationship with China. So he visited China. So he's opened the doors for that as well. Then Prime Minister Mark Carney, we had a massive issue with India. So I think he's compartmentalized that now because there were allegations of a Canadian being murdered here, and the allegations, the fingers were pointed towards India. India has always denied those accusations, but then he's compartmentalized that, just as US did. US exactly did the same thing. There were allegations of plot to murder a US citizen over there, but US compartmentalized that, but they have different relationship. Just yesterday I was watching, US once again highlighting how strong US and India's relationship is, and they didn't go on the floor of the Congress and accusing India, but former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did. So I think Mark Carney, from China to India to Australia, he went over there to Japan, England, Nordic countries. He's been to US as well. So he's a traveler. He's traveled a lot from South Africa. So he's traveled a lot to all those countries. And I would say, today India and China, they both need energy, and the $2.3 billion, the nuclear deal that Canada and India has done, and there are so many other things. And I also saw that he is quite focused. You mentioned about the Davos speech, the who's who of the world come over there. And when Mark Carney was in India, he was meeting all the business leaders from Reliance to Tata. He was trying to interact with those leaders and attract investment, because what I can clearly see is Prime Minister Mark Carney, he is really focused on bringing in the investment. So bringing in the investment, that's what he's focused, whether the Qatari, or any sovereign funds from the Middle East, he's focused on that. He's focused on building good trade relationships with Europe, with China, with India, Australia, all those countries. So foreign policy has really done well for now. Second part, I will say, you mentioned about the affordability. Yeah, you're right. I mean, nothing much has been done, actually, and on the contrary, I think the inflation numbers, with the crisis now, the inflation numbers are consistently going high. And I'll also want to add, because since we're talking job numbers as well, we just lost 108,000 full-time jobs. The unemployment rate is 6.7% now. So I think the unemployment is high. Then the second factor you mentioned, affordability. We have to do a lot of work. There is another third part that I like to mention: crime. What's happening on the crime file? We have, Ruby Sahota. She's put in charge of, Minister to Combat Crime. But are we really able to fight the crime? I mean, you go back 10 years ago, there were not that many extortion calls, that many auto thefts, that many home break-ins. To the point, right or wrong, I'm not saying right or wrong, to the point that one of the homeowners in Vaughan shot at one of the intruders, the Premier is applauding that. That's a different issue. We'll leave it for some other time to discuss that issue. But that is how serious the issue of crime is. Then the immigration, that is a mess. It's a mess. And that's why we clearly see Prime Minister Mark Carney really backpedaling on that. He's issued so many things, cutting down on the number of international students. They just announced that, you know, retroactively, if you've stayed in Canada for more than 1 year from 2020 June or maybe, but somewhere in the mid of 2020, if you have applied after that, retroactively and even further as well, after 1 year, you cannot apply for asylum because you stayed in this country for 1 year. So we saw that the system being abused. Many people who stayed here for 2, 3, 4 years, they went to their home country, they came back, suddenly they don't have a work permit or they don't have a valid visa to stay in Canada, and they say, okay, we're applying for asylum, you know. So immigration, that file, I think there is a lot to be done on that file as well. So foreign policy, a good go. Interprovincial trade, we've talked about 100 billion, 200 billion, so many other things, interprovincial trade. There have been lots of discussion, but has it really happened? That's another point. I heard Mark Carney peg on infrastructure, you know. Shovel-ready projects, we'll spend on this one, but we still have to see some action on the infrastructure front as well. We've heard a lot of discussion on the defense front. Yes, we've achieved our 2% target, that yes, 2% of GDP will be investing in our defense. But then are we there? I mean, do we think the way the world has become more and more hostile, are we ready for the likes of China and Russia? Imagine if China comes and they say, you know, one of our submarines is ready, either you agree to this thing. China would say, I doubt. US would come to your rescue. Are you ready? So that's a big question, especially in the Arctic region, the way it's opening up as well. So there are so many other questions, but I'll talk about that later if time would permit, but I will pass it back on to you. So yes, it's a good start. I think Prime Minister is trying hard, Mark Carney is trying hard, and I have some many inside details that I have shared, you know, because when I talk to MPs, when I talk to ministers, I'm not supposed to name them, and when I talk to so many people over there, and when I talk to my sources, you know, they tell me, this is what they tell me, he hardly sleeps for more than 4 or 5 hours. That's good. He likes people very disciplined. He doesn't want anybody getting late. And you know, if I was in his office today, he may not like because I'm wearing brown shoes that are considered a little bit more casual. He always like black shoes. He wears black shoes. The other day I was looking at Minister McGuinty, you know, with that movement, and I saw black shoes. Okay, no brown shoes. But he wants people to work hard. He's also asking everyone. He's a no-nonsense boss. That's what everyone tells me. But you know, the proof is in the pudding. Let's see how it goes. Ramana ji.
Yeah, you know, and the other thing is, you know, as we're reflecting on his first year in office, is he too much in the weeds, right? Like, I guess if he were to, you know, there was a lot of speculation if he was going to run for the Trudeau government before, if you recall, and it looks like he's great at foreign affairs and he's great at trade minister. Those jobs he's doing really well, you know, because you can see clearly he's opened up those relationships. And I think, you know, when it comes to the trade minister and the foreign affairs minister, I guess they're getting a big boost by having the prime minister really spearhead their portfolios essentially, right? And you know, when the big boss shows up, other countries will listen. So now hopefully he'll put that energy he's put into those portfolios more on the domestic front, because, you know, the average person in this country, you know, has a domestic job. They're not doing foreign trade. They're not, you know, it's not a thing. They're not, you know, heads of massive natural resource companies and doing trade or any of that stuff. It's the average worker that needs to be able to have affordability in housing and those just basic concerns. Like, imagine where we've come in Canada, such a rich nation when it comes to natural resources, fresh water, everything, land, highly educated, you know, population, and it's like as if on purpose we have a housing shortage, and we don't have a land shortage. We're not like Hong Kong where we have to build on top of each other. We're not like, you know, New York City Island where you have to build high rise. We have abundance of land. We're the second largest country land wise, right? And so a lot of it you have to think like, is it on purpose? Canada is having such a hard time. Like, Canadians have housing issues and it's through the roof. But why? It's not because we don't have the ability to build communities. Because, you know, you've lived in certain communities where 20 years ago there wasn't much of a population, but as soon as you built the housing infrastructure, the local plazas come in, the local schooling comes in, the local community center, and then, you know, you'll always have your, you know, gas stations that will pop up, you'll have your Shoppers Drug Mart, you'll have your Walmart, you'll have the model put into place, you'll have the nail salon, you'll have, you know, the tire shop. That comes to service a community, right? And so when you think about, like, Canada's not short on anything. God-given wise, it's a very wealthy country. Like, there's nothing, no mineral that Canada doesn't have. It's got the 4th largest oil reserves in the world and hasn't even come to a fraction of extracting it like those other nations have, which they highly rely on. So you have to wonder, like, why is Canada playing like second fiddle? Why is Canada like underdeveloping itself to the point where it's like putting its citizens into a poverty situation when it doesn't have to? And when you look at like the global world and you see all the conflicts, and the conflicts are always about natural resources. It's all about natural. What do you think this whole open up the Strait of Hormuz? It's about oil, right? And so you just have to wonder, like, what's going on? And I would have to say, if he is that serious of the boss, then, you know, maybe retire some of the MPs that have been in that caucus for so long. Get some fresh people in. Get some fresh ideas in. Maybe not the people who've been there for like 10. Now, the average MP under Trudeau has been there for 10 years. They won in 2015. It's 2025, right? Because Liberal Party was 3rd place, because you had the Conservatives who were government. Then you had NDP as opposition lead party, and the Liberals were 3rd party. So majority of the Liberal MPs have been there for 10 years. Are they tired? Have they delivered? What is it? Because if the way Mark Carney's going, he gets the consensus and he wins another election, whatever the case is, you need better MPs perhaps. And I don't want to knock them, but I'm just saying, you know, the 2 roles he's been focusing on, which is foreign affairs and international trade, they're doing well. But we can't have the top person, the Prime Minister, having to go on every portfolio so it would deliver well, like the things that you mentioned. The other thing is, if he doesn't deliver on the basic things that affect 100% of Canadians, affordability affects 100% of Canadians. Having trade with other countries doesn't affect 100% of Canadians. This is going to leave room for a leader that's going to come through. If Pierre Poilievre's days are numbered, which it seems like it might be, because there will be some sort of dissent under his watch, a lot of things went wrong for the Conservative Party in terms of their standing and how they were positioned to go ahead. And really what he's done is, since Pierre Poilievre's become leader of the Conservative Party, he's really isolated any other superstar. It's been about him. He's been the brand of the Conservative. And, you know, when he didn't perform as well as he should have in the last general election, you know, losing a 26-point lead, you know, losing his own seat, all these things under his watch and his leadership, he's losing MPs. When another leader comes in, and what if a most populist leader in the biggest province of Ontario comes in and wants to run for leadership? What if it's someone like a Doug Ford, or Doug Ford himself comes in? Mark Carney's got problems because Doug Ford can speak to the average Canadian, say, hey, affordability, crime, all the things we hear Ford saying right now are all the things that Mark Carney's not saying. So in a situation where if Pierre Poilievre's days are numbered, and then it opens up a position for a leadership election for the Conservative Party, if somebody like Ford comes in, which could have the support of memberships in Alberta, which could have supportive memberships in Quebec and so many other things, Mark Carney has, you know, is not paying attention to the domestic issues where he should be.
What about his French? Ford's French?
Well, listen, I think we've made so many exceptions for so many things because people just want affordability. You know, who's really, like, what, think about the Conservative caucus. Who do you know that can actually have a brand that can mobilize and become the next leader?
Other than Ford?
Without having, I mean, in the caucus itself.
Or
a Conservative leader in any of the provincial parties. He's got the biggest recognition. the biggest brand. Like, think about like when Andrew Scheer became leader. He was leader for like 3 years. People still didn't know who he was. It takes a lot of time to brand someone.
Aaron O'Toole, same thing.
Aaron O'Toole, same thing. It takes a long time to brand a new leader and bring them to the stage. And Ford skips all of that. Now, I'm not his spokesperson. I'm not saying he's running for election. I'm not saying any of those things. But I'm saying in the world of politics, things move really fast. And if you don't perform, you get put aside. And so far, Pierre Poilievre hasn't performed, right? With all the advantages he had going into that last election. And then what's happened to his party post-Carney, which is, there's pre-Carney and there's post-Carney days for Pierre Poilievre. And so, if Mark Carney is, really trying to, there's like, you can't, what's the term called where you are micromanaging, right? Like, I don't know if he's a micromanager, but it appears with everything you hear, he's really got to pay attention to domestic stuff. That's key. You want to stay in power, give me a domestic agenda and show the results. Like, put some good people in there for domestic policies. Put like a committee there that is just for affordability.
Yeah.
And then and put your drive towards that.
I think, let's call it a wrap. But before I do that, thank you so much, Romana ji, and I couldn't agree more with what you just mentioned. That yes, I think we need more competent leaders. Of course, there are some competent leaders, but I think we need more. The Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, if I may name her, I think she's doing pretty well. We have François-Philippe Champagne. I think he's quite competent as well. Of course, there is Tim Hodgson as well, who knows the finance. He's an energy minister right now. Evan Solomon, he was a journalist like us. How well he's going to do. International Trade Minister Marinder Sidhu, he's been very, very active. But then you're right, there are others, who have to really perform well, or there'll be more challenges for the Liberal Party. Talking about the Conservatives, are they just playing the catch-up game? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because the ones that have been performing, they had their boss with them.
Yeah.
When you're supposed to do trade, international trade, if you have your boss with you, the prime minister, it's going to go well. When you're supposed to do foreign affairs, and if you have your boss show up, it's going to go well.
Yeah.
So, so it's about the other ones. Does Carney need to now go help the other ones do well in their portfolios is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Now, I think you have to do well yourself, because that's, even as an MP, if you ask me, I mean, once you're elected as an MP, you have to do well yourself. Even as a cabinet minister, you have to start showing your abilities once you get any sort of cabinets, how active you are, I think we're missing so many points here. I mean, we have the FIFA World Cup here. It's just approaching. How many times has the Minister of Sport showed up in different medias, Ymedia is one of the largest ethnic medias in Canada. And now with Ymedia, the new mantra is ethnic and mainstream. We have mainstream platforms, we have ethnic platforms. I've never heard from the Ministry of Sport. We have FIFA World Cup, and we have one studios right in the heart of Vaughan, the hub of soccer. Markham, Vaughan, Brampton. We have most players of the Canadian national soccer team from Brampton. Most players, if you ask me, Canadian national, where are they from? Brampton. And our team was there. They were recently visiting. I think City of Brampton is highlighting even more our national soccer team than our Minister of Sport. I haven't heard anything, and I wish we had more time, but we'll carry on this discussion. But before I let you go, two things for you. One, my colleague Shubi, he was on the Prime Minister's plane on his trip to India, and of course after that, Prime Minister went to Australia and Japan. But from Ottawa to Greece to Mumbai to Delhi, Shubi has some exclusive things for you. And just yesterday, my colleague Shubi was with Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, and we did ask him a few questions as well. One of them was, are you playing the catch-up game? Because when we asked you about India, what did you mention? And here is Mark Carney. He's had some very good rapport with Modi now. He even praised him in Australia. I mean, Mark Carney didn't need to praise Modi in Australia, but he did so. And are you going to play the catch-up game? The second thing is, Pierre Poilievre has named now when you start naming 2, 3, 4 cabinet ministers that these should resign, so he's naming them. Why would he do that? Here's a Ymedia exclusive on Prime Minister Mark Carney's tour. My colleague Shubi will show that coverage, and here's Ymedia exclusive on Pierre Poilievre as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Anything else, Ramona, you want to say before I let you go quickly?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Stay tuned with Ymedia for all the latest updates. Channel Y in Canada, Channel Y US, Radio Y FM 105.9, and don't forget to pick your copy of Midweek newspaper. Thank you so much.